This is the Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. Episode 77, recorded October 6th, 2016. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I am your host and editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is our keeper of comics here at TV Enthusiast, William.
Hello.
So today we're going to be talking about Westworld. We're going to be talking about The Flash, a little bit of Arrow. We're going to be talking about Luke Cage. We got a lot on our plates and a few other shows that we'll just kind of get through pretty quickly as well. But let's get started with The Flash. And while we're talking about The Flash, we'll also bring up Arrow a little bit here and there. But we're mostly going to focus on The Flash. So, first impressions, Will. How you liking season 3 of The Flash?
I loved it. I loved the premiere. So great. Some great moments. Nice to see Wally West finally in the Flash role, even if this was like an alternate timeline thing. I'm pretty sure it's not long before actual timeline Wally West gets to wear the costume.
Yeah.
but it was awesome to see that.
They're not going to make that costume for one episode.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's it. You want
throw it in a furnace?
Yeah, they were good. Like tease that for one. Oh, you want Wally West to be a Flash? That was it. That was it forever. Yeah.
So I remember when Flashpoint happened, we're like, how are they going to manage with all these other shows and this continuity to do like this kind of Flashpoint thing? Well, we got our answer, which is that it was resolved before any of the other shows aired.
It did the typical like CW thing, which is I noticed this is I call this CW thing because I noticed this from watching like Supernatural and stuff, is where they like do like this crazy thing in like the season finale, and then like you were like, and then they let you stew like all summer over like, oh man, how's this going to affect next season? That's going to be crazy. Next season happens and it's resolved in 1 or 2 episodes, and they're moved on to something completely different.
Even more so in this case. I think you can draw a direct correlation to the impact it would have had on the other shows with how quickly they resolved this.
Yeah.
Like, they had to have been doing meetings going like, okay, so how are we going to get through this? Like, I'm sure that they didn't plan on Flashpoint going like all season or something. I'm sure that they were planning to resolve it within a few episodes or something, but I'm sure that the reason why it was resolved in 1 episode was purely because they didn't want to like have an episode of Arrow that had to take all that stuff into account, and then like the next episode of Arrow, like it's all changed without any explanation because the Flash isn't on that, you know?
Yeah. But the thing is, I would think that should just mean like they probably shouldn't have done it at all then. You know, I mean,
they could have planned it a little bit better. They could have segmented the shows. What would have been interesting is if they had, instead of doing Flash and Arrow first and then doing the other 2 next week, if they had done like Flash and Supergirl, because Supergirl's on a completely different Earth, it wouldn't have been affected, and they could have gone at least into 2 episodes, you know, but
right.
They didn't do that. So
yeah, they didn't do that. So man,
there's other ways they could have structured that out, but they basically were like, okay, we need to resolve this quickly with some small lingering consequences.
Or they could just cop down and said, oh, Barry's actions actually didn't change anything for Oliver Queen's timeline.
That would have been kind of lame, but yeah. I'm glad they didn't do that. So we got to see
some awesome scenes with the Reverse Flash.
Yeah.
Especially like that scene where he's telling Barry, you know, that Barry has to let him kill his mother, and he's like, so you know what you have to do, Barry? And he's like, yeah, I know. And then he's like, yes, but I want to hear you say it.
So please, Reverse Flash, go back in time and murder my mother.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
that's so messed up.
we got to see another rival speedster, the rival.
Yep, we got to see the rival. Don't really know what his motivation is, except for, I guess he just wants to be the best speedster in that. I have no idea.
They did do a little callback to the first episode of The Flash, though, where Joe ends up saving the Flash by killing Weathermaster in the first episode. Oh, yeah,
that's right.
And they made a Weathermaster reference. They said, what is he, some kind of Weathermaster? Like when the rival was creating the tornadoes?
Weather Wizard, yeah.
Weather Wizard, that was it, yeah. So they did that, and then besides the Flash, besides the rival, we also got to see the hint at another bad guy who some people think is going to be
Dr. Alchemy.
Yes. And it also seems, because they mentioned that Mirror Master might be playing a part this season, and Alchemy was being scratched into the mirror.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested to see how that plays in. Heavily rumored to be the role played by Tom Felton, who plays Draco Malfoy on Harry Potter, who's going to be in the next couple of episodes. But that's just rumor and speculation at this point.
Also, there is a hint that Flashpoint may have had an effect on Arrow, because there was an interview where they announced, they made it very clear they're bringing Katie Cassidy back to Arrow. They're bringing Laurel Lance back to life, and and the producer for Arrow strongly suggested that Flashpoint is the thing that allowed them to bring her back.
That would be kind of weird, just because, having seen the episode of Arrow that aired this week, there is a lot of stuff about her being dead, and it aired a day after the Flash episode.
Yeah,
which resolved Flashpoint. So that would be kind of strange if, that was. That their continuity would be kind of a little messy at that point. But, I'll use that kind of as a segue to kind of dive into Arrow, because you haven't watched this episode of Arrow. You were kind of swearing off Arrow.
I'm kind of not too hyped about Arrow. There's a lot of stuff about it that's still really rubs me the wrong way. There's and it's not just the Felicity stuff. It's it's like the dollar store Black Canary. It's like having freaking it's apparently they're bringing on a character named Prometheus, but it's not the Prometheus villain from the comics, and I'm like, why? I'm like, if you're gonna just why? Don't do that.
So in the first episode of this season of Arrow, I can say that it's gotten grittier again. It's going it's trying to go back to its kind of first season roots. The flashbacks are much better than they were in the last two seasons.
This show can't be gritty again after all their dumb speeches about.
Yeah. But yeah, Oliver's talking, getting in an argument with, I think it's with Felicity or his sister. I can't remember which one, but got into an argument where he was talking about killing again.
Yeah.
That he wants to kill again, and the reason why is because he could have taken out Damien Dark multiple times before Damien had ended up killing Laurel.
Right.
And that if he had, that would have never happened.
I don't think
other lives would have been saved.
I don't think that's actually true, Oliver. Damien Dark had magic powers.
Yeah.
You had no idea how to overcome.
Well, there was that one time they took away his powers.
That's true.
Briefly. At that moment, he could have gone in and killed him.
That's true.
So there's that, I guess. But and I guess any moment between then and the point that Damien got his powers back, he could have gone into the jail and murdered him. Snuck in and murdered him.
Even season 1, I just straight up kill all the bad guys. Oliver Queen would not break into a prison to murder somebody. But
yeah, so it's kind of I think that it feels a little bit better because of that. The big downside is Felicity, who, it's not that she's worse than she was before. She's probably a little bit better because she's not in a relation, like, besides the Prometheus thing was like, ooh, she's got a new man in her life. And it's like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, nobody cares about her or her dumb relationships.
It's just to the point where, like, she'll make some stupid joke or say something, like, when she's just on screen, and it just unnerves me now. Whereas before, I would have been like, yeah, okay, whatever. Now I'm, like, so just in hate with that character that she does anything. She does an eye roll, does anything, and I just want to punch her in the face. I hate her so much now that, like, just her being on screen unnerves me. It doesn't even matter if she's doing anything. She's just there, and I'm unnerved. So her mere presence is still a detraction on Arrow, even if she's not doing anything, which just shows how horribly they handled her in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's just awful.
But, I mean, like I said, though, the flashback storyline's much better than it was the last couple seasons. It finally kind of feels like a continuation of the first 2 seasons flashbacks. Cause he's like in Russia and he's joining the Bratva. So it goes back to these things that they actually need to explain why he did, which is like the last couple seasons where like they just kind of like created some weird scenario for him to be there for some reason. Without any kind of like this fits in to explain this aspect. No, it doesn't. It doesn't fill in any new old mystery, but this is talking about how he became involved in the Bratva, the Russian mafia, and it returns his Russian friend from the first 2 seasons of Arrow.
Nice.
That was in the flashbacks, you know? So you see him again, which is really cool. So that's interesting, and the kind of going a little bit grittier and darker again is kind of interesting. Felicity still holds it back from greatness.
Yeah, I figured she would. They really ruined that character. They really gotta do like an entire overhaul of that character.
They just need to get rid of that character. Like that's what I was saying. Like even when she's not doing anything on frame, I'm annoyed. That's how toxic that character has become. That she's annoying even when she's just in the background.
Right.
So that's just a toxic character. They just need to destroy it. It's like Nikki and Paolo territory right now.
It's like Skylar White.
Yeah. Worse than Skylar White. On the plus side, there's only one Felicity because her mom isn't back yet. At least not yet.
Don't worry, they're preparing the episode.
Oh.
The
show wouldn't be called Felicity if it. Oh, wait a minute, it's not called Felicity. What?
Yeah.
But that's Arrow. So Arrow, they have a lot to make up for. It looks like they're kind of moving in the right direction. I actually think what they plan to do with Prometheus. What they seem to be planning to do with him is kind of interesting from what I've heard. So I'll just have to see.
I don't know what they plan to do with this guy named Prometheus.
Well, apparently they're trying to make it so that it's tied to, it's tied to the people that Oliver killed in the first season. So it's somebody connected to somebody that Oliver killed in the first season. So it's the idea of consequence.
Right.
Shit, when he came back and started killing people, well, now that's what Prometheus' motivation is towards Oliver. So I think that's kind of interesting if that's what they're going to do.
I guess that's kind of interesting. I don't know. They could have called him somebody else.
But, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, hey, at least it looks a lot better than last season.
Because if he's not going to be the guy who has a hate on because cops killed his parents, then I don't know.
It's funny though, because I remember when they started announcing some of the stuff they were going to do in this season. And, I think they are doing, some good things by going kind of grittier and stuff. They kept going, yeah, we're going to return back to like season 1 roots, like bad guys that aren't super powered and stuff. Cause we feel that that's where we lost our way. And it's like, no, that's not where you lost your way. Felicity is where you lost your way.
Yeah, that's not really, that's not really, like Deathstroke was the best villain season that show ever had. I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
And he's coming back for
we lost our way.
episode 100 or something.
So they're like villains who are super powered. That's how they lost their way, lol. So basically they're saying they lost their way when they did Deathstroke, which was like their best season ever. I guess it just proves that the people writing the show are like idiots who don't even know what the heck they're talking about at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of the main impression I have.
Yeah.
The last 2 seasons, actually. But let's move on from Flash and Arrow, and let's talk about Westworld. Westworld debuted on HBO this Sunday.
God, I didn't think I don't know, this HBO has been in such a rut lately with all their new stuff. They can't find anything. They're losing Game of Thrones soon. They've lost all their major stuff. True Detective kind of went down the toilet.
It fizzled out after the first season.
It fizzled out after first season. That didn't go nowhere. All of the great HBO stuff is kind of, is waning, is gone. They literally, they only have Game of Thrones left, and that's got 2 very short seasons left.
I'd say Silicon Valley too. Silicon Valley is really good.
Yeah, Silicon Valley is really good. But it's people are saying, okay, well, HBO needs a new hit. And they tried Vinyl. No,
that flopped.
That flopped. They tried all these shows. I can't even think of half of them because they're so irrelevant.
They did the NIDA, but that was a one-off miniseries.
Yeah, that was a one-off miniseries. That was good. But yeah, that was a miniseries, and but they need something that's going to take them into the future.
Yeah, they need something in the way that they used to have The Sopranos, and then they had Deadwood, and then they had I can't even think of it right now. Boardwalk Empire, and then Game of Thrones. They need something in that line of a really big event show that people talk about.
So people have been saying that HBO is in trouble basically right now, and I think they've found their answer in Westworld. I watched this and I was blown away by the pilot.
Oh yeah, it was amazingly put together, down to the tiniest details. Was just thoroughly good. I was surprised at the amount of surprises they were able to push in the first episode.
I was, yeah.
I mean, the big one that everyone tries to avoid, spoiler alert, you should know this for any show we're talking about, we're going to be going full spoilers, but we're going to spoil the first episode of Westworld. But they did an amazing job of making you think that James Marsden's character was human.
Right. Well, they do a little bit of sleight of hand trickery with that, because they show him on the train heading into Westworld. That's the first scene, is he wakes up on that train and he's heading into Westworld. So immediately the impression is planted in your mind just from that he is a visitor.
But then it's elaborated upon too, because he'll walk by people, and I heard an explanation where they referred to it as being kind of like a video game, and I agree with that in the sense that there's NPCs offering quests.
Right.
And basically there's the guy going, hey, there's the bandits in the hills, we're going to round up some people to go. Hey, son, you look like you're the right type, that totally makes you think he's the player. They're giving him.
Right, because the next scene is he's coming into town, and immediately the one guy asks him, if he wants to be sheriff, if he wants to go catch the bad guy. Yeah. And again, that doubles down on that impression that you get that this is a visitor, this is a human visiting Westworld, until you find out when he gets shot that he was actually a host and that he wasn't an actual person.
And what's so surprising isn't just that that's the one, but it was a complete switch, because Ed Harris's character, who ends up being a human that's there for his vacation, they totally played him off like he was the man in black in the Western, He was the evil Western character, and you find out, he's actually the human. And it's the other guy, he's just an NPC or a host. when he kills him, and he's a human that just wants to take one of the robots and rape him, and wants him to fight back, and wants to play this like horrible person. And that's his idea of like a fantasy of like an amazing thing to do, which is kind of like an interesting commentary on just like, when you play a video game and you take the dark route.
Here's something. I don't agree with you there, because I don't think that's at all what Ed Harris wanted to do, or actually what he did to begin with. It appeared to be that way. But it's clear that he has an agenda. It's all wrapped up in mystery. His character right now is completely wrapped up in mystery. There's more layers there than just somebody wanting to run around and be the bad guy.
I agree with that, but I think he also raped that robot and has been doing that. I think that he's a person that came to this game and probably started going to Westworld as like the good guy, and then got bored of that, and then started doing all the bad storylines.
Here's something that will blow your mind.
Now he's looking for something deeper.
Here's something that will blow your mind. I don't even believe he's human.
You don't think he's human either?
No.
I think he is. That would be a big swerve if they did that, though.
That would be a huge swerve. I agree.
I
think maybe he's a host. I think maybe he became self-aware.
That would be interesting, but it would also make sense just the way that he's human if he was the way he was talking to the other character when he shot him.
Yeah.
About how like you were programmed to be like a loser, and then like just kind of like the way he reacts to it, and the way he just kind of was completely unaffected by the other guy's bullets, which, the NPCs, the hosts, they can hurt each other, but they can't hurt host. That's kind of like the thing. And so the guy was shooting at him and he couldn't hurt him. So that kind of like, well, he should be able to hurt him because of that. So it's just really interesting.
Yeah.
If he is not human, then there's probably a much deeper thing than him just becoming aware at that point.
There's a subtle thing there too, because the host, he was shooting at Ed Harris, trying to harm him. But as we know the hosts are programmed to not harm humans at all, to avoid that at all costs. Even if there's the appearance that a host may harm a human, they are actually not going to do that. And it's not something as simple as, well, their guns can't shoot people. It's something more complex in that they simply will not aim and shoot at an actual person, because that's not the way they're designed. So I think it would be incongruent of James Marsden's host character to start shooting at a person if Ed Harris was in fact a person.
I don't know. I think that it might be, I mean, this is a far future scenario, so I don't know. I think that it's likely that the host, that there are no bullets in any of the guns. I know it's almost kind of like a laser tag type situation, but when, a host gets hit, there's a detonation that comes from their body.
You notice watching the episode, there's absolutely zero, not one incident where a host actually threatened a human, or, did so much as that, pointed a gun at an actual human.
Mm-hmm.
Even that one scene where that one host is going crazy and he killed all these other hosts around him, and the actual humans, they're scared and they're kind of, they're scared, they're cowering, cowering and everything. The host, even though this host has gone way off script, still does not even so much as aim his weapon at them.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like kind of interesting aspects of this, and ways that it's been played up interesting. The use of flies.
The flies are interesting. Okay, so here's the flies. The use of flies. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. This was the best thing. This is because I love the attention to detail of this show. So when you talk about the show, you have to talk about the little details, because it's all in the details with this show.
Yeah.
And one of the best details that I think, if you're not paying attention, you could easily miss, is the flies. We see multiple times throughout the episode a fly lands on a host and a host does nothing, acts like nothing's going on.
Yeah, crawl right over their eyeball.
Crawl right on their eyeball. Nope, they don't even go off script or anything. They don't stop to acknowledge the fly.
And then the programmers directly said that the host couldn't harm a human, and they said they couldn't even harm a fly.
Right.
Literally.
They literally, it's a living thing. It's a living thing, and the hosts are programmed to not harm a living thing. This is literally the way they're programmed. So that's how they stress that there is zero chance of a person being harmed by a host, because a host won't even harm a fly. So so they're really trying to stress that. And then you get that one scene where the sheriff or that one guy they're out on the trail and the fly lands on him, and all of a sudden he like completely breaks down.
Yeah, he goes into like some weird ass Tourette seizure.
Yes, he like starts seizing. And that's because his programming is changing. That's because when the fly lands on him, he is caught in this state of where he probably wants to kill the fly, but his programming won't let him, and it totally screws everything up with that host to the point where it can't function because it's fighting its own programming at that point. And then at the very end with Evan Rachel Wood's host character, you see at the very end, after she explicitly says she wouldn't harm a fly, we see a fly land on her, and she nonchalantly, casually, almost instinctually swats it right off her, just kills it right on her face.
Yeah.
Yeah, without...
That was such a, because they did such a good job establishing the whole fly thing, the second that happened, it's like...
yeah, pretty much. That's where the episode ends, too, That's
I've never been so shocked at a fly being hit.
yeah. So something's their programming is changing.
Yeah.
And that is interesting.
You mentioned the sheriff seizing, and that brings me to another point I wanted to bring up, which is the use of special effects in a really subtle way that they overlaid on that scene, as well as when you see the really old robot that Anthony Hopkins' character was talking to. And also just other kind of scenes. Most of the scenes when they were talking to the robots in the laboratory, outside of the actual theme park.
Yeah.
They use special effects to kind of make their movements they did it more with the guy that Anthony Hopkins' character was talking to, so he looked really jerky and robotic.
Oh yeah, the older one.
Yeah, they used the way they use special effects to kind of create an uncanny valley.
And Anthony Hopkins is talking to his host, which was one of their first hosts that they made, I guess.
Yeah.
And he says something they were, people could see right through it that it obviously was a robot, like he said with his host back in those days, it was obvious to people visiting the park. And the new hosts they have, they're so realistic that it's almost impossible to tell.
Yeah, I've never seen such a convincing portrayal of a human as a robot as that scene.
Right.
And a lot of it wasn't just the performance, which was also there, but they used special effects to chop up the footage to make it look like that.
To make it look so he did look robotic and fake.
The way he moved, his movements and stuff. And they did little subtle versions of that for when the sheriff was breaking down. They did some little subtle special effects over his face and stuff to kind of make him just start to become more and more unnatural in his movements and stuff, to show that he was breaking down. So they did that a lot. It's really amazing work that they pulled off on that. So, bravo to the effects team for that. Bravo to the performances of the actors in that. I think some of the best performances came from the scenes in the laboratory where they suddenly, one of the people would be asking a question, you're in a dream. And they'd be talking to him, interviewing the robots. And at a certain point, they'd say, oh, turn off the accent. And then all of a sudden they'd be talking in a more natural voice. And then they'd say, turn off emotion. And like all the emotion cuts away, and it was fascinating to see like the way that the faces just completely changed at that point. You know, like Evan Rachel Wood's character when the emotion drops out of her and she keeps talking.
Some breaking news here. Westworld episode 2 is up now on HBO Go and HBO Now.
What?
Westworld episode 2 is up on HBO Go and HBO Now.
Oh, it is. I'm gonna have to check that out early.
Yeah.
I'll probably check that out after I go downstairs tonight. But but I was saying that the absolute best performance of that was the guy who played Evan Rachel Wood's father. Where he had the moment where he reverted to an old program where he played like a creepy, like it was like a horror character that he played.
Yeah. They brought up the idea that they reuse these hosts for multiple roles. And so they actually have programming, or they have like scripts for multiple different roles, like inside their programming that normally they can't access the older scripts. They're not supposed to be able to access them. But Anthony Hopkins thinks that maybe some of the problem with the one malfunctioning host is maybe because he's trying to access an earlier script. Like, they can't really figure it out that the reason why he malfunctioned is precisely because of the fly. Like, they don't know, they don't get that. They don't notice that. So they're looking at this host and they're trying to figure it out. And Anthony Hopkins comes to the idea that maybe he's trying to access an earlier script.
Which is all related to this program that he had put in to allow them to pick up on gestures that they learned in their past runs.
Yeah, that they learned. Yeah, exactly.
And by doing that, they also opened up some kind of a pathway towards not just gestures, but memories. And then that ties in with the flies and what was happening there. And it just, it's the bug, to be said.
It's the bug. Yeah, it's literally the bug. but it's interesting because, we learned that these hosts are reused for different roles. And that they weren't just created for the one specific role that they're in.
Before that was revealed to us, we had just, when he was just going off, the way he was talking and stuff, it just seemed like, holy shit, this robot is completely sentient and has been hiding it. Now he's just completely revealing himself and he wants to kill all of them. And then, like, it's almost like that's like a glimpse of what's coming. But then they explain that away as like, oh, that's from a past character he played, which is just more interesting ways in which they're playing with us, the audience.
Exactly. More interesting ways they're playing with us, the audience. And it's interesting we see that because after Evan Rachel Wood's dad kind of freaks out and glitches out, I guess you could call it. And they have to put him in cold storage. They just put another host in that role. And then we see at the end, she walks out, says, "Hi, Daddy," even though this is completely different person there. It doesn't matter.
It's unsettling. It's so unsettling.
Yeah, it's so unsettling. And so that's another example of they just rotate these things out to play whatever role they need them to play at any given time. And it doesn't affect anything, really, because it's not like Evan Rachel Wood's host comes out and then she notices her dad is different. She doesn't at all.
We had mentioned earlier that Ed Harris's character is playing some sort of a deeper game. That was kind of, I think, one of the robots, one of the hosts, and there was like a pattern or something like on the inside of the scalp. That he seems to be following. He's like, turning this into, I don't know, like some kind of a...
I'm not sure what sort of pattern that is, because I can't think of any reason for there to be like some pattern or some kind of clue or something in the scalp. The only thing I can think of is that it's a logo, it would have to be some sort of logo or copyright printed onto there, because there's no reason for like this company to build these robots and then start hiding secret messages under their scalps or something. That'd be stupid.
Well, what Ed Harris's character said is that there's a deeper game, and he referenced the creator of the game.
Right.
Saying that there is a deeper meaning inside of it, which says Anthony Hopkins' character might have put some shit in there that other people don't know about. Right. But I don't know if it's necessarily a game that he intended them to find, or more if it's just kind of like, you know,
Ed Harris is just batshit insane.
I think there's more to it, but I don't think it's that Anthony Hopkins' character was hoping somebody would scout the robots and find out.
Yeah.
But there's a thing that like programmers do,
right?
Where, like, if you look at like, say, like a code of a game or something, you might find little jokes and things inside the code that's never meant to be seen by anyone, but it's still there. It's still there because it's just like it's almost like it's there because it's there. It makes the programmer like have a little giggle knowing that there's this little bit of code tucked away in something that nobody knows about but them. And so there's stuff like that all over the place. Like in video games, there's stuff like where they've had to, I think I remember seeing something where they use some kind of like a game genie or something to get like a cheat in Psychonauts. And it allowed them to reach this area that you could never reach any other way in the game if you didn't like break the code basically to cheat. And by getting there was like a picture or something like that somebody had inserted into the game. And it's purely there. It's not there to be seen. It's just there so that because the person knows it's there. And so that's what I'm thinking is the case, where like Anthony Hopkins' character put something in there, some small detail that he didn't intend for any guest to actually ever find. But it's just kind of like a little mystery that he kind of stuck in there to amuse himself in the same way like a programmer would do something like that. And then you have, you know, Ed Harris's character is kind of tracking this down. He's trying to like he's like the guy that goes into video games and tries to find the things you're not supposed to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what he's trying to do. So he's like piecing clues together based on that. That's at least my read on it.
That's a good read. Well, yeah.
Well, good read from you too, that he might not be human. That's interesting. So
yeah, that's interesting possibility too. So I'm looking forward to watching more to see if any of that is confirmed.
I'm gonna watch some more tonight.
Yeah, I know. I was surprised. I was like, yes.
Good find there. So now I'm going to kind of go over some other shows that have either come back or ended or premiered during the fall, just very quickly, rapid fire. So I'm going to start off Fear the Walking Dead. Second season just ended. I told you before about how like the character motivations just got really screwed up in the second season for no apparent reason. They kind of addressed that. So they had the character that was the most kind of like acting strange for no apparent reason to like his kind of reckless behavior led to it. So it gives me hope that like, you know, it might not have been the cleanest way to resolve that situation. I don't know if there was a clean way because I think they kind of screwed up in the way they had told his story earlier. But now that he's gone, like they don't have to deal with the consequences of their mistake as writers, you know?
Right.
Which is a good sign for the show. The show also seems to be going into a more natural kind of normal direction, where before it was getting all caught up in this weird like Mexican mythos ideas of like, you know, maybe the dead aren't really dead kind of like thing that it was like asking the audience to get on board with. And I'm like, no.
What? No.
Yeah, it was really kind of this weird, like they were trying to get into this whole
Maybe
like Mexican spiritual ideas of the dead or something. And they're kind of moving away from that.
Entire other show that disputes that. So
yeah,
good job.
Yeah. And they're moving away from that, which is good because that was like horrible.
Yeah,
that was I think what was killing the show for me before. So now it seems like they're kind of resolving that. Very bloody, violent episode. Good. They took some characters that were kind of annoying because they weren't adapting and gave them a chance to adapt. They took characters that they adapted way too quickly where it became unnatural and just got rid of those characters. So you don't have to deal with them anymore.
Characters that just became like insta-Daryl. No.
Yeah. So I have hopes that they're going to do much better with this going into the third season. Like they noticed that they made a mistake in the first half of the season and they kind of course corrected.
Right.
So that's what I have to say about that. The Strain has been back this fall, continues to be really good. You haven't watched The Strain, have you?
No, I haven't.
I think you'd really dig it. It kind of is like a zombie apocalypse type thing, except instead of zombies, it's like vampires. But but they're Guillermo del Toro vampires. So they're like really
true vampires.
Exactly. Like they open up their mouths and they launch out their tongues. They call them stingers, but they're like 6 feet long, like thick, like tongue-like things. Their insides change completely when they're infected, and then they drink blood through that. But then while they're doing that, there's like worms that crawl out throughout their body that like go into somebody, and if a worm gets into you, like that's it. Like they multiply like instantly, and you're just infected. Period. So it's just like the way it's so, and it's getting into like it went this like hyper gritty route, and then it's starting to weave in kind of more like a mythological side at the same time. So it's really interesting. I like the way it's shot. I like the colors in it. It's just in good performances throughout. It's a really good, fun, post-apocalyptic horror show.
Oh, nice. Sounds good.
So it continues to be good. It's on its 3rd season. I think it's more than halfway through the 3rd season now. And it got confirmed for a 4th season, which is going to be the last. It's based on, I think, a trilogy of books that Guillermo del Toro wrote. It was originally going to be pitched as a TV show. Then he couldn't get it like greenlit because they couldn't make something at that scope at the time. So he turned it into a book series, and it was like 3 books. And then now they can do that kind of scope, so they made it as a TV series again.
Oh, nice.
So it has a real finite ending that's coming up in its 4th season. So that's a strain. And then some new shows. Timeless, which is NBC's time travel show. We talked before about how every network has a time travel show now.
Yeah.
Timeless is the one. It comes from Sean Ryan and Eric Kripke. Sean Ryan of The Shield, as well as like Terriers. He's a really good, interesting person. They're an interesting showrunner. And Eric Kripke is the creator of Supernatural. And it's about a guy steals a time machine and he's trying to fuck up history. and then they have to use like a prototype time machine to kind of go after him. And they send like a historian, like an army like ranger, like a special ops guy.
Why don't they just send Jean-Claude Van Damme?
But they send all these people after this guy, and the girl that she's like the history professor or whatever, that she's the one kind of keeping them in line, like, okay, make sure you're not wearing this, or you make sure so that they don't stand out,
Right.
She's kind of seems to be more deeply tied and connected to this guy and the changes he's making. And they already kind of made a pretty significant change because they weren't able to stop a certain change they made. And so she came back, and like her mother was sick, and now instead of her mother being sick, her mother's fine, but she never had a sister.
Oh.
Like, so she had a sister in the previous one, now she'd never had one. So, and she can tell the difference, but like her mom can't, so it's getting into that kind of time consequences stuff. It's pretty good.
And then Barry Allen has to go back.
Then there's No Tomorrow on the CW. That is the show. We watched the trailers for it a while ago, where this guy thinks that the world is going to end.
Oh yeah, I read the synopsis. Sounded
It's just kind of a fun. It fits in with
sounds kind.
It fits in with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and Jane the Virgin a little bit more towards the Jane the Virgin side.
Yeah.
As just kind of like a quirky, funny comedy.
It just sounds like a dumb romantic comedy. So it's like
it is, but it's kind of like it's quirky enough that it's interesting. It's not as good as like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend or something. Like I said, CW kind of has 2 markets now. They have their market, which is for like the comic book shows and Supernatural and that stuff. They have that market. And then they have the market that's mostly female oriented. And that includes like Jane the Virgin and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and stuff like that. Those are kind of the CW's 2 markets. This definitely fits into that market. But where Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is really funny and good in a way that like crosses over really heavily, in the sense that you can, like, anybody should be able to enjoy it, this is a little bit more towards the side of like Jane the Virgin, where some people just are not going to dig it at all.
Right.
But it's still a good show. I mean, if you're into anything like that, it's still a good show. And then I watched Frequency, which is also on the CW. Did you ever watch the movie Frequency?
Nope.
So this was like a movie that I adore. And so I watched, like, it's one of those movies where like you're flipping channels and it comes on, and then that just means that the second that comes on, it's what's going to be on your TV till it's over. You know,
Nice.
Everybody has like a few movies like that. And Frequency for me is one of those. And it's kind of a time travel story. It's CW's time travel show, but instead of somebody actually traveling through time, it's basically, people communicating through time. It's a father and a daughter. They're communicating through time.
Right.
And the movie was really interesting because it went into the idea of like, well, you know, by figuring out that he can communicate to his dad, because it's a father and son in the movie, a father-daughter in the TV show. But the son figures out that he can save his father who died, by telling him exactly how to like save himself. And he was set to die like, you know, a day after he basically discovered that this was his dad he was talking to. So he has to prove to his dad that he's his son from the future, and then find a way to get him to not die. And then it's a really interesting way they handle, you know, that kind of time travel dynamic, because he ends up saving his father, and then time kind of rewrites, but the son has both memories. He remembers things, how they happen both ways.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And it creates consequences, because now that his father lived, his father still ended up dying, but much later and of like for a different reason. And then at the same time, his mother ended up dying because of like the serial killer that was on the loose that like had supposedly only killed so many people, but because of this shift, all of a sudden tons more people had been killed by the serial killer.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, it explores like they have to go into the consequences of like, okay, well now how do I save my mother? How do we figure out who the serial killer is by, you know, crossing time with that? And so the TV show is doing much of the same kind of thing. You know, it's hitting the same beats basically. And, yeah, it's a really good time travel story in which nobody actually travels through time.
Just voices travel through time.
Yeah. So it's really good though. If anybody just wants to watch a really good time travel type movie like that, check out the movie. If you like the movie, check out the series, because it's kind of playing to the same beats. What I'm looking forward to is when it's going to start doing its own thing, because I've already seen the movie, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't mind seeing the events again, because it's a really good like time travel caper kind of thing. So it's fun to watch. But I want to see them explore like new things. And that's, you know, as a TV series, that's going to come. I just have to wait for that moment. But that's it for my rapid fire. Now let's close off this podcast by talking about Luke Cage. So I've watched through this series. I binged this faster than I did the other Netflix Marvel shows.
Oh, okay.
I got through it very quickly. Will's got through 7 episodes. It's right about the halfway point. So it's a good cutoff point. And something pretty significant happens in the 7th episode, which makes it also a really good cutting off point. So let's start talking about Luke Cage. What are your general impressions right off the bat from the first 7 episodes?
General impressions that it's very well done. It's a lot more low key than
Loki.
Yeah, very, very, very low key. No, it's a lot more low key than what you would expect. That what I certainly have expected from it. You know, like I kind of like expected, you know, like wall to wall action. This is not that show. This is a more, this is, people talk about these shows being grounded. This is probably the most grounded thing Marvel has ever produced, in that it's definitely got its feet firmly planted in reality. And then from there, it sprinkles in some elements of fantasy, mainly Luke Cage's powers.
So do you like that more grounded approach that it's taking, or were you missing the fun stuff, like the comic book stuff?
I like the grounded approach. I mean, I could get the fun stuff from like a million like different other shows and movies and stuff. I mean, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying the grounded approach, really.
It's actually interesting that they're doing this, which before Iron Fist, which Iron Fist is going to be the opposite of this, I think.
Yeah.
Iron Fist is going to be the least grounded of the three, I think, you know? So it's kind of like, it's almost like it's giving us a chance to kind of like breathe, like get rid of all that battle fatigue from Daredevil. Where like it's too many fights.
This is even more so than like Jessica Jones, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Like this is like, so we have Luke Cage. He's basically Superman. He's bulletproof. He has super strength. The only thing he can't do is fly and have super speed, but you know, no heat vision. But lacking those, you know, he's basically Superman. But he's interesting in that he doesn't want to be a superhero. He doesn't want to go out and fight crime and, you know,
doesn't want to get caught up in all the shit.
He doesn't want to get caught up in it. He just wants to be left alone. Like he got his powers involuntarily, you know, you know, this is just shit that happened to him.
After being like wrongfully imprisoned too, which just doubly makes it like.
Yeah, after being wrongfully imprisoned, he's a fugitive now. He busted out with his newfound powers. And now he's in hiding. He changed his name. You know, he's trying to keep a low profile because he doesn't want to go back to prison. And that's another thing about it, is that he's not going to go out there and start fighting crime because he's trying to keep a low profile. But, you know, actions that occur, namely when Pops is killed, and Pops is like basically a father figure, has become a father figure to Luke Cage. You know, Luke Cage comes to Harlem and he gets to know this guy Pops, you know, and he really bonds with him, you know, working at his barbershop and everything, to the point
Pop
where
is played by Frankie Faison, who played a role in Banshee. He was very good as well. So actor I really enjoy. I felt they killed off Pops a bit too early.
I felt they did too. I felt like they could have done more with him.
Without spoiling anything, like getting into the later half of the season, it suffers the same kind of issue that all of the Marvel Netflix shows have, where it feels like they've gone on a little too long.
Yeah, the Marvel Netflix shows have a real pacing issue.
I think they could have cut out like a whole storyline. I'm not going to say what it is, but cut out a whole storyline from Luke Cage, taken basically around where you are, but maybe a little bit further beyond that, and made that the end, and then stretched out the beginning a little bit more. It almost feels like it's similar to like the way Daredevil season 2 felt like two different shows.
Yeah.
You know, there was the Punisher half and then there was the Elektra half, you know?
Yeah, the Elektra stuff and the Punisher stuff, yeah.
It's similar, like the way this is gone. And based on the big event that happened in episode 7, which, spoilers again, obviously, with Cottonmouth being killed.
Yeah.
That felt like, well, he was the interesting villain, you know?
Yeah, he was the interesting villain. Because who else do you have? Cottonmouth had such charisma. Who else? You have Black Mariah, who, I mean, no discredit. Alfre Woodard is amazing. She's an interesting character in her own right.
She's a good actress. Her character's just not that interesting.
I mean, I would disagree. Her character, you know, she has layers to her as well.
Not in the same extent that Cottonmouth did, though.
No, yeah.
Cottonmouth, there was so much more to mine, especially after the episode 7 where you get into his backstory. Just makes him so much more interesting, and then he's gone.
I really thought we were digging into his backstory to learn more about him, because he, you know, what it did, it also made you have more empathy for him, which is interesting, because, you know, it's always interesting when they make you have empathy for the villain, you know, like
that's another thing.
Like he had such a tragic background, you know, he has such a tragic backstory, you know, and he even laments on that, you know, and let's see, when Mariah comes to meet up with him, you know, he even laments on that, you know, that he could have been somebody, that he expresses that he could have been somebody that he wouldn't have had to live the life he's living, you know, and that's the first time you ever even hear him express regret at doing what he's doing,
It had been subtly portrayed before. They've been portraying him as somebody that kind of like has like two sides. Cause one of the things that initially kind of bothered me about his performance, but then I started to actually like it, was the way he kind of like grins and laughs all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you start to go like, oh, well, he's doing that because he's like, he's fronting, He's covering up like his real, like, if he's nervous, if he's mad, then he's covering it up with a smile and a laugh.
Right, yeah.
And you start to get that, and then it becomes much more interesting. And of course, that ties in when you watch, the flashback in episode 7 and realize about his past. I really wish, like I wish that Pops was killed later in the show, I really wish they had done the same thing for Cottonmouth and had him go to the very end of the show, maybe like an episode before the last episode or something. That's where he's killed, and really stretched out how he became kind of unhinged.
Right.
Cause initially he's trying to be a very compromising, very good, he's trying to do the business right, basically. Like, right. He knows he's a criminal, but he's not trying to flaunt his criminality, when Pops is killed, that's not him, it comes down to being his responsibility, but it was one of his soldiers acting on their own to do it. He had already figured out a way to resolve it peacefully and was going to do that.
And was going to do that. It was one of his soldiers acting out of turn, thinking he could be big and score some brownie points,
And that's the thing, like, I wish they could have really played that up much longer, with him because Pops dies in episode 2. Cottonmouth is unhinged by like episode 4.
Yeah.
I really wish they had gone like, I wish that travel to being unhinged like took pretty much the whole season. That would have been much more interesting to me than what ended up happening. And it seems like he jumped. He became unhinged way too quickly. And then he was gone. And then they just kind of like jumped into a different story.
Now we got a new story happening. I don't know what's going to happen now. Apparently they found something that could hurt Luke Cage.
Well, they cold popped in a character out of nowhere that you'd never seen before.
Yeah.
Just here's a character. Here's a new player.
Diamondback, right? Well, because
I don't know if I should say.
They keep mentioning this guy Diamondback, and we never see him. So I'm assuming it's Diamondback, but maybe it's not.
Won't say either way.
I don't want you to say, but I'm just making assumptions because that would make more sense because they keep mentioning this guy, and you haven't seen him.
The character is introduced as just like, okay, like it kind of like, you're like, am I missing something? Like, am I supposed to know who this is?
I get what you're saying. Like, I guess I didn't have that reaction because they keep mentioning Diamondback and he has the bullet. This character has the magic bullet, and Shades made it very clear that Diamondback has access to those weapons, and that the only way Cottonmouth could get his hands on that ammo was either by letting Diamondback take over and do it for him, or for Cottonmouth to pay very exorbitant, apparently, prices for them.
Yeah. See, I think the whole idea of the magic bullet, I think, is a hindrance to the series.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea, like, when they watch the video demonstration of the bullet, when Cottonmouth watches it with Shades, like, the guy gets shot, he's wearing a bulletproof vest, he's fine, then it explodes, and that's what, like, hurts him. But when Luke Cage is shot with it, it goes through him. So it can't go through a bulletproof vest, but it explodes, so it does damage. But it just instantly went through Luke Cage.
Yeah,
it just kind of feels like a weird, like a jump in logic that they would even assume that would work on him. Like they'd watch that video and go, well, clearly this would work on Luke Cage. And what's so annoying about that to me is that there was a moment in which Cottonmouth and Mariah were talking about it, and Mariah said, then drown him, then poison him. Is he poison proof? Poison him. Is he unable to drown him? Like, that kind of idea is so much more interesting than a magic bullet that can penetrate his bulletproof skin.
Yeah, it's clear that they wanted like some form of kryptonite for this guy.
And if they were going to do a magic bullet, did they really have to have it be like, oh, it's just from the event, when there was nothing to make us think that there was anything like that in the event, period. Wouldn't it make much more sense if it was like a vibranium bullet?
No.
Or something? Because vibranium is rare, it's expensive.
They don't have access to vibranium. Nobody has access to vibranium.
Well, there was the one guy that stole like a whole bunch of it in Age of Ultron, and then Ultron got a bunch back, so it could be implied that there's a very small amount, and that would explain the exorbitant prices as well.
Right.
So
I think, well, saying it's alien technology is just as valid as saying it's vibranium. That actually doesn't bother me. And also that actually makes a little more sense because that's local. So, that probably, if there was anything to salvage from that, that would definitely be more local than like.
But they also
vibranium.
portrayed Diamondback as almost like an arms dealer type person.
Yeah.
So you'd think of him as somebody that has contacts and stuff all over the world,
Yeah.
The way they talked him up. I don't know.
Doesn't really bother me. Seems like a good enough explanation for Magic Bullet and why it exists.
But even like I said, I don't even like the idea of the Magic Bullet at all in the first place.
I don't. I don't.
It's just kind of weak. So I have mixed feelings on Luke Cage. So as people probably guessed by the way I've been talking about it, but the way I feel about it, and I have a review up on the site, if anybody wants to check it out, but the way I feel about Luke Cage is that it has probably the best executed scenes of any of the Marvel Netflix shows. There are scenes that are masterfully put together in this show, much more so than Daredevil, and probably the least well executed is Jessica Jones.
I think
as far as the actual execution. I think the reason I like Jessica Jones the most out of all of them isn't because of the execution, it's because of the writing, it's because of the story.
Yeah.
It's because the story is so deeply personal that's why I think it's the best. It's so deeply personal and it says something, and then everything else, like in the actual execution, is kind of like, it's a big step down from like Daredevil. I think in execution, as far as like the way it's shot and edited, Luke Cage is a huge step up from Daredevil. It's really well done. The way the music is, the way everything's cut to the music, the way the editing is done, everything is just phenomenally done. But I think the narrative is a mess.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So it's just, I still like it. I do still like it. I like all of them. It's just, I'd say my opinion is that it's the worst of the three. But
Yikes.
That's like saying the worst of like three of my favorite things, That's not saying it's bad. That's just saying it's not as good as two other things that I really liked. So it's, people are going to have different opinions on it. I think it's interesting the way they played into the social commentary of what's been going on recently with race relations in America. So they kind of, and I know the showrunner has used a quote very similar to this, and there's a quote later on that you haven't heard yet, but it's not really a spoiler because it's something the showrunner said, even almost word for word. And I'm not going to quote it exactly anyways, but just the idea of like, it's really something to have a black character that's bulletproof.
Right.
In this current climate of things happening.
Climate. Yeah, exactly.
And so I really like the way they were able to play into that, the way they kind of like Luke Cage didn't wear hoodies in the comic, but they gave him the hoodie thing because that's like the Trayvon Martin thing, the hoodies. And so it ties into this kind of social commentary thing of like, okay, black youths being killed, by police or something wearing hoodies, and this kind of stuff that's happening in the real world. And the way they brought that into it, I think was really good. And I like that. And I like the fact that they really went full on black with the show as far as like the cast and everything, that they didn't have a bunch of like other, white people in there or something. I think, and I think more than any of the other shows, more so even than Daredevil did to like really establish Hell's Kitchen as like a character in its own right. I think this show did so much to establish Harlem as a character in its own right.
Yeah, definitely.
So, anything else to add?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right. So, we'll probably talk about the rest of this, I guess, on the next podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
So, that's it. So, thank you everybody for tuning in to TV Enthusiast, the weekly set. You can reach me on Twitter at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will on Twitter at Voxel Hero. Check out our Facebook page. Check out our YouTube channel, our front page, TVEnthusiast.com. You can send us emails, contact at TVEnthusiast.com or the weekly set at TVEnthusiast.com. Either one will reach us, or you can just leave a comment on YouTube, Facebook, anywhere we have an official channel of stuff. We'll get your comment if you post it. And we'll talk about it on the show if you have something interesting to say. So, that's it. Thank you everybody for listening. Bye.
Bye.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset at TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage of all of your favorite shows.